We find ourselves at that point in time once again, tribe. How the devil are you all doing? You're looking smashing, by the way. Keep up the good work on the whole self-respect thing. You deserve it. Anyway, we've come to the end now. Alas, let it be so. The very end of Cinta Kaz's marquee event. And what I like to do every so often is when we get to the end of the marquee events, I like to go ahead and do a little bit of a spot check. Do a little bit of a spot check on the health of the game because, quite frankly, I love this game. I love this game and I want it to succeed. And I want to know, just based week on week and month on month, are we still sort of operating in standard operating procedures over here for CG and the player base, or are we in a bit of a decline? Are we on an uplift? Who knows? So I did this for when Claire first joined the holotables. We skipped out Vel in the middle. And now we're jumping in with Cinta. We're going to see what's going on, how many people are still playing the game, are they still investing, is this a good thing or a bad thing for CG? You and I can take a look, and we can make some assumptions, right? Groovy. So the first place that I like to do a little bit of a spot check, ladies and gentlemen, on the health of the game is just generally speaking within my shard, within sort of Colosseum, right? Usually, if I can maintain around about, the top 30, I'm usually quite happy. I do obviously spend on these characters. I have adjusted my spending massively ever since the change into this era system with the era of the anniversary when we had Maul come to the game. And then we found out, later on that essentially it's impossible to get a 7-star unlock without throwing boatloads and boatloads of additional cash at the game. I completely changed my approach to how I play Galaxy of Heroes. Essentially, I have curtailed massively my crystal expenditure, throttled it all the way back. I'm basically only refreshing my Cantina energy. That's right, I'm even letting my mods lapse a little bit here so that I can continue to invest into new characters as they come out in the era. What this means is I will always be purchasing the Era Pass. I will be purchasing the Surge Pack, which is 12 pulls of shards for these characters. And then anything else that I need to get them to 6-star on day 1 of the marquee, so that by day 7 of the marquee, I've got them at 7-star. I also tend to buy the $30 pack for the marquee, and that gives you an additional 30 shards, I want to say, as well as like 5 Omicrons, right? Just a little bit. Whereas previously I would be spending about 100 to 120 per character. Now I'm spending 30, as well as the episode pass, which is an additional 20 every month or every 2 marquees. And then I save my crystals and I buy the Surge Pack and any additional packs that I might need on top of that, depending on RNGesus. He giveth, yet he taketh away. Depending on RNGesus, maybe I'll have to buy a pack or 2 more, or maybe I'll actually get 7 stars early, like that. What happened with Darth Vader Duel's End when I got him. I pulled a 145, I was over the moon. So, not spent on the big packs for these guys, like the $70 or the $100 pack. Not done that for any of these, and I'm managing to keep on top of it just about, which is nice. So the roundabout way I'm saying here, what I'm talking about here is trying to set the stage for where I feel like I'm normally going to perform without spending money on the actual error level mats. I will spend on those mats, but only towards the end when it comes to the full unlock, because getting to 65 is free. I'm not going to spend money on that, but going from 65 to 85 is going to cost me some sort of money. So the reason I'm using crystals instead of real world cash is that I want to be able to save money from the shards so that I can use it on that end game error leveling currency to get the legendary character unlock days of 7-star at the end of the era. Okay, so usually when I'm doing that, you're usually able to be in the top 30, right? If we take a look at the very top of my shard, and granted there's going to be 40 50 shards all like this, we can just take a look. People are on tier 7. That to me shows people are whaling quite heavily. 3 characters at error level 80 is a significant amount of investment. Already 7 stars on all the characters. They've obviously whaled their way up in shards. They could be doing what I'm doing, but they're certainly spending additional money on error leveling. The only way to get up here is by spending cash. Now, there's no way for me to really quantify that. This is more just a dip test of, are people spending money? And, based on my top 10, at least, well, everybody in the top 10 is definitely spending money one way or another, right? So it's just going to be a matter of how much. Everybody here, like this guy's got to level 45 on multiple characters, must have spent some money on error leveling just to get through that hump, to get over to 45. It's the only way to do it, realistically speaking. And then the people in the top 5 are all spending significantly more money on getting those error levels. I assume most of these guys have probably got at least 6 stars, most likely 7 stars on their characters. Yeah. Looks like pretty much exclusively. Oh, okay, this guy over here is, you know, he's not necessarily wailing on the stars. He's probably just diverting that investment from getting them into 4 stars to just be like, I'd rather have error levels so that I get more, so that he can get more error currency from doing things like being good in Colosseum. He can then get Lightspeed tokens, whatever he happens to want. Was that Grand Admiral Goose? Was that Goose that was doing that? Yeah, Grand Admiral Goose was doing that. I'm wondering, what is Grand Admiral Goose's, what is his sort of GP range? 11 million. See, it kind of makes a little bit of sense for somebody that is not late game, so that they can gain more from getting Lightspeed tokens to fill out their roster a bit more. Somebody that's at the end game like me, I can't really make use of Lightspeed tokens. Let me show you what I mean. If I was to go into the shipments over here, look at shipments, we'll go into error shipments. Erodium Lightspeed token. I could get these if I wanted to, but do I really care if First Order TIE Pilot is Relic 6? Or, you know, Geo Soldier, Hoth Rebel Scout? You know, like, none of these units are useful to me, really. I mean, they are, but they're not worth me diverting all this resource from coaxial servo motors, for example, right? It's not worth it to me. But people that are missing 4 or 5 million GP from me, they probably have much more units in here that are worthwhile. So maybe it makes sense from their perspective to do it, because realistically, Relic 10 is just not worth the squeeze, guys. It's a nice to have, but the only thing we've seen that has had requirements for Relic 10 so far in the game has been the error battles at the end of an error, and it requires 1. So my current stance on Relic 10 is I will do that 1 Relic 10 at the end of each error. So this one, it was Maul Hate Fueled. Next one's going to be Cassian Andor, because I'll need Cassian Andor at Relic 10 in order to access the top tier of his error battle. That will give me 60 coaxial servo motors, provided I get the rest of that squad up to Relic 9. Big investment, but I like the rewards. And I'm late game, so I can kind of afford to do that instead of focus elsewhere, right? And it sets you up for the future, right? And that will give me enough to get me, and you know, it pays for itself in that Relic 10, and it will give me enough to do an extra 2 or 3 Relic 10s over time, so I can use that on slowly getting my Galactic Legends up to pace. Because you don't need it, but it's nice to have, and you might as well, because where else can you go, right? But when it comes to broader picture, we've taken a look at the narrow view of how does my personal error shard feel. Let's talk about big picture, rest of the game. How many other people are still investing, still going through, still pushing forward? Let's take a look. So in order to do that, we have to go over to the trusty website SWGoH.gg. It is kind of the mecca for Galaxy of Heroes content creators and players in general, because it's got the wonderful insights for GAC, which everybody loves and loves to hate, and it also has boatloads and boatloads of data points and metrics that we can reference just to get an idea of things. So I'm going over to player data over here, filtering it by all, so we've got the entire player base to look at. This is Claire. She was the first marquee of this era, and we can see that she's gone up. When I did this video for Claire previously, it was about 380,000 unlocks. She's jumped up to 452,840. When we looked at Stormtrooper Luke from the era of the anniversary around the first time, he was on about 470,000. But the era of the anniversary saw a massive influx in new players and new accounts simply because it was a big event. It was the 10-year anniversary, we had a new game mode, there was historic characters that had a lot of draw, a lot of sex appeal to them, you know what I'm saying? I mean, who doesn't look at Spider-Maul and think, damn, that's a fine piece of ass? Yeah. We didn't see that necessarily going into the era of Andor. We did not see that, because there's just, the shine has worn off the apple, people got a little bit disillusioned with the game, so there was a small drop-off. However, on the whole, this is still pretty healthy. 450,000 units. That means 450,000 accounts, not necessarily individual players, because I know many players will have an extra account. Or some 2. Or some absolutely psychotic people have got 3 or 4 accounts. That's right. These people are insane. But I respect them. Kind of. So, 452,000 units of Claire Marquee, and we can see if we scroll down, quite a lot of them 1.37% of them are 7 stars. This doesn't surprise me. Most people are not going to be pushing for a 7-star unlock. It is prohibitively expensive. It is a late game thing, requires a lot of good performance. The top 1% of people are doing it. Makes sense. Makes sense to me. Although we are seeing 7.5% of people are at 5 stars for her, which probably is because at the end of the journey, you get a journey guide unlock that gives you good light speed tokens and some nice rewards. Makes sense to me. Okay, and then if we were to drop down just to the bottom over here, 0.3% of people have got it at relics, which is really high levels of whaling, or roughly 1,189 people at relic 2. That is like, this is the big dog whaling situation over here. This is where it's specifically early on, it does cost a significant amount of money to get to this point. All right, so that's Claire first and foremost. Then we had Cinta over here. Cinta also 452,000. So those players have maintained and restrained and are still in the game. Roughly, it's more or less the same number of units, slightly less, probably because there were people that were playing when Claire came out that have since quit the game or haven't logged in 3 weeks or something like that. That can happen. That can happen. Once again, we are only seeing about 1% of people at 7 stars. Doesn't surprise me at all. And again, about 7% of people at 5 stars and about 20% at 4 stars. All of this kind of tracks in rough numbers, right? Makes sense. A lot of people over here, we're talking about 30% of people nearly are pushing for some sort of an unlock for Cassian in order to benefit, with the big bulk of those being at 4 stars, and obviously people that are not whaling sitting in that 70% range of 3 stars. Still, when we check down here, we are still looking at about 1,200 people. So the people that are whaling on Claire are also whaling at similar levels, almost exact numbers over here. Whaling on error leveling for them at about the same percentile, right? We're looking at about 0.3% of people are going big balls all the way, take these guys up to the high relics they say the high relics, the high error leveling that they can do. So that is there for Cinta. Let's finally check out on our new marquee. This one should have the lowest numbers in total, right? So Cinta over here, she has also got 452,800 unlocks or active users in the game that have got her unlocked, which is really healthy. It aligns up with everything else that we've seen, all other characters of this era, all at about 452,000, which means we've got about 452,000 active accounts in the game, which is a pretty good number, right? If we were to go down, how are we looking in those percentiles? Lower numbers on the 7-star, quite significantly so. Doesn't surprise me, we've still got one more day, essentially, where those numbers can get a big uplift, because that last day of the marquee, I know that my account, personally, is going to get that at 7 stars later on today. So I would assume that in a couple of days' time, when that information feeds through to SWGoH, we're going to see a significant jump in 7-star unlocks, and it's all going to sort of bump upwards, essentially. We'll have some people going from 5 stars to 6 stars, but most likely a number of 6 stars are going to come jumping up to that 7. Around 20% at 4, and then 3% at 5. The 5 stars, a little bit low, but maybe we'll see a little bit of uplift 4 going to 5. But the rest of it kind of, makes sense. 4 stars in particular makes total sense. That kind of all tracks. Then down here, how many people are going up to gear 13? It's about 0.24, a little bit lower than the others, around 0.3 I believe we saw for Claire. Can't remember what we saw for Cinta. I think it was about 0.24. Let's double check on that. It was 0.27, so that's smack dab in the middle between those, 0.24, 0.27, 0.3, as they sort of feed through. All of this kind of makes sense. People are slowly investing their way up through these characters and the error levels. And then finally, let's go ahead and check out, we can't see, where is that? There's the Relic 2. Once again, we're seeing at about 800. That's probably going to jump up a little bit, I imagine, over time as people get more and more error leveling currency to actually spend through to get these characters to higher. But about 1,000 people again. This is just over 900 unlocks over here at the relic levels for our final unit right now, at least. Cinta. Things right now are showing that the game is still operating pretty healthily. I would almost say that we've had quite a nice little uplift. Whereas previously at the start of the era, we had about 380,000 people unlocking for Claire. That's jumped up an additional 70,000 essentially over the last month and a bit. That's showing positive signs from me. I still maintain that CG are doing a big push right now, that Disney is doing a big push, and we're going to see new life breathed into all forms of media around Star Wars. In just a very short few weeks, about 6 weeks' time, we are going to be getting a brand new film, the first feature-length film we've had since Rise of Skywalker. I'm expecting us to see heightened levels of marketing. I'm expecting to see big pushes across all platforms to try and drive focus into that. I think we're going to get era that is related to the Mandalorian and Grogu film. I expect us to have unlocks, new raid, Galactic Legend, all related to that, coming in the next era. Once this one's finished, fully expect it to be a Mando era. Maybe we'll have a stopgap in the middle, but generally speaking, when we get a new film, the era content is immediate. If you take a look back to the last film that we had, Rise of Skywalker, 2 days before the film dropped, we had Resistance Hero Finn. That was our first marquee. And then I went into Poe, and we got Zori, and we got Hux, and we got Sith Trooper and stuff like that. All of that immediately led into let's get Rey and Slacker unlocked, right? That's how that all went over. It started with the release. And I fully expect us, with the new era dropping on May 4th or 5th, that it's going to lead up into something like that. They won't necessarily have information about what those units will be straight away, or what the unlock leads to eventually, because it's probably going to be spoiled by the film. But there are things that they can show us. You know, we've already seen characters that exist within the film. You know, we've already seen that Sigourney Weaver's character, I can't remember her name, she's already on merchandise for Lego. She's in the trailer. We've seen Zeb. Are we going to get a new version of Zeb in the game? We've seen Mando has got a flamethrower now. We've seen Grogu flying around in his little spaceship. There are things that we can pull from. We've got Rotter the Hutt as well. You know, there are things that we can pull from just from the advertisement alone that lends itself to we could build something within this game in the next era. And it looks like CG are willing to push it. Looks like things are going relatively well. But that's enough about me just blathering on about nonsense, essentially. I'm curious about your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. How do you feel about the game? Are you still seeing quite a few whales within your shards? Does this data sort of reconcile with what you're experiencing in the game? And how are you feeling about it? Will you be pushing for an unlock on the brand new Cassian Andor Undercover? Or are you just letting this era slide by? I feel like this one can be a little bit skippable, to be honest. The next one I feel is going to be the big one. The big kahuna, the big cheese. I do love cheese, and now I'm hungry.